So I'm gonna do a MakeAll, a clean wipe of all binary files. So if you do Control D, now let's do Control D. So I have a C drive, a D drive, CD-ROM drive. So on my C drive, oh, I don't want to mess with these. These are not the. This is for the CD-ROM when you're making a binary for it. Okay, I'm gonna delete that. This is master hard disk, old boot record. When it chain loads, it puts the old one right here. The other one is the stage 2. It doesn't put it in the gap. Normally, most bootloaders put stage 2 in the gap from 0 to 31, but I go ahead and put it in the file partition area. It's just, I don't know, just safer. I don't know what the rules are, so I just do it how I can control it. So, so we deleted those binaries. There's a kernel.bin in the root directory I'm going to delete. And compiler.bin I'm going to delete in the compiler directory. Now, oh, I should have done that to begin with. Let me change to D, and I'm going to show you a... Whoa. Oh, that was dumb. Okay. You either do drive D or you do change D colon, but what you don't do is change D. Anyway, so okay, so drive D. Now we what do we do? I was going to show you find file starting at the root star bin star. So I'm just going to show what the on a normal drive, here's all the bins. Now if we go to the C drive where I deleted, find file, I can delete the D drive too. Anyway, star bin star. I think okay, well, we have those. Okay, so I've deleted them. To be quite honest, it doesn't make much of a difference because it uses the block address and the blocks are in the same place at the moment. But that's as near as I can come to deleting it. The irony is that my bootloader will still boot because it uses the block location of the kernel.bin, but that's beside the point. So I was going to do a line count rep. So I just want to explain what's on the distribution. You can do this on your own computer. That's what's important. So on your own computer, the kernel is 25,000 lines and the compiler is 20,000 lines. Those are the only things compiled ahead of time, and they make a binary for the compiler and a binary for the kernel. During boot, the Atom directory is compiled just in time. That's just how I like it. Okay, so we deleted all the binaries. Now we are going to remake them. It's pretty silly, but I called the make. If you want to know what this routine does, it compiles compiler and it compiles kernel. It's a pretty, well, that's not, this routine installs the bootloader, so it's not quite as stupid. There's a MakeAll that just does that, and never mind. Anyway, so make C. Now if you're compiling onto a CD-ROM, I think you do that. I forgot. And then it parks, I think it puts the temporary kernel in the that other directory, the boot directory. Okay, so the hardest part is answering these questions. They're done automatically as much as possible. Okay, what is the home drive when this is booted? When this is booted, the home drive is C. What is the first drive letter of the disk? If the disk has multiple partitions, it's C and D. And so in this case, it's C. What is the type of this C drive? It is an ATA hard disk. So T, two. Do we want to probe or skip? Now, if you're doing this with automatic standard in, you skip, but we want to probe. Now, on a native machine, you might get other port numbers like FF10. It turns out that the ATA protocol works at other locations. So you do a system information in Windows and get the port for SATA IO ports, or you do in Linux you do an ls PCI -v, and that will give you the SATA port numbers. Okay, we happen to get them listed, so we could enter 0x1F0, but it's actually a little known fact that if it's a tiny number, it knows it's one of these buttons, so it's just a 1, ATA. Now we might as well do the drive T is the CD-ROM. It is an ATA, a TAPI, I'm sorry. We want to probe, and it's number 2. And if you want to know what I do for standard, I do a B drive, and I do a RAM, and if you have a RAM disk and you're rebooting in RAM without doing a reset, you can actually compile the kernel and boot a kernel in RAM. It's tricky. It's kind of showing off. Another thing that can happen is I can make a rescue disk with some of the 640K. I can store the compiler.bin file into some. Normally the kernel.bin is loaded in the 640K at boot. I can also load the compiler if you want to boot from a USB or something just to get to a command prompt, but it can't store the whole operating system. Anyway, I can do that. You don't know how to do that, but so we're just going to hit malloc. How many blocks? Let's just say, for example, 280, 80, 2880. That would be like we just made our RAM drive identical to a floppy. Carriage returned if we're done making the drives. Disk cache, just hit enter. You can. Now we're at the options. Hey, you want to do something cool? Oh, we were just demonstrating that we recompiled. Is that what we were doing? You want to do text mode? No, let's do text mode, because a lot of people think that it already works in text mode. Okay, so watch what we're going to do. Text. This is I shouldn't show you this because it's negative advertising. Anyway, so we just recompiled the kernel. So in the root directory /*, let's see what this is. Oh, I was being stupid. What am I doing? I don't even know how to. Oh, that doesn't work. That dir command is not a good. Never mind. Oh, did it work? Maybe it did work. What are we doing on the, we're on the D drive. I want to be on the C drive. Oh, it worked. I was just being spacey. Okay. So we're on the C drive. There. So there's kernel.bin. It fits in the low 640. It's if you get a file from my website, in the files, there's a special spot on my website. You can get bin rep. And this reports on binary files. So we hit include. Now we have a now I can go bin rep slash kernel. The reason it's kernel.bin.bic is because it's contiguous. That means the bootloader can load it easily without a fat table. It always stores it contiguous, and the only way you can install my operating system is using my install script. Some asshole's gonna try to install it without following directions, and my bootloader requires it contiguous. Anyway, so this big monster is all the imports and exports of kernel.bin. Believe it or not, it has some imports that are delayed until the kernel, until later. As long as they're not used, it can have those unresolved imports. So the other one is bin rep. I could do a, if you want to do doc max. Now I have an infinite command buffer. Now I can say bin rep. This is my own binary format that my compiler makes. I decided nobody needs to be making binary files except me, because you can just use just-in-time. Now in the binary file there's a table of absolute addresses. My binary files are position independent. The kernel has to patch itself after the bootloader loads it. Everything is identity mapped, so it's a physical address. It's in the low 640. If you want to, anyway, so that's the binary file format has the code, and then it has these big tables. They're not big. Anyway, import export. So there's not a linker. There's just a loader, and bin rep. Now I go compiler. So compiler.bin.z. Okay, so those are repeated examples of imports. Those are imports from the kernel. Then we have exports from the compiler module, and then we have the absolute addresses. So so you don't ever need to do, if you want to know how to do binary modules, you're not supposed to. You're supposed to just do just-in-time. But you say, oh, no, we're not going to do the compile. If we compile the kernel, we have to answer all those questions. So let's compile the compiler. First of all, there's a compiler.project. All that is include. We don't have a linker. All we do is we compile compiler.prj. That's all you have. That's compile. And then you say load kernel.bin. That's how you load it. So you might be wondering how I compile my kernel. What I do is I have a whenever you install TempleOS, if you want to run my setup, and if you're booted in VMware, go to the accounts example directory. This is my setup. These are my files. Copy these files into home and reboot, and then recompile. Anyway, so if you copy those files into home, that will give you my setup file. And on my menu, I have a routine called, this makes it, bam, that makes everything. it answered. Oh, I didn't do the text. I was going to do that. Anyway, oh well. You want to see that? I don't know. Okay, so so I just made my kernel and I made my compiler. Now there are no object files. It compiles everything all the time. If it's fast enough, who cares? Now we can reboot. That's a RAM reboot. If we want to do a the other reboot is a this is an actual hardware reboot. If you're wondering what a RAM reboot is, it is loading the kernel, the fresh kernel, and then freshening all the memory so it's not fragmented. We want to modify my in my distro under options. You can use this file if you want, if you're using VMware or QEMU, if you're using a virtual machine or VirtualBox. Oh, I changed it from what I used to have. I forgot how. Oh, that's distro. It's config. Okay, I did change it, by the way. Okay, so debug options. So here's my options, and I could do it a variety of ways, but we're going to put, these are the answers to the prompts. Oh, we want, this is options. Okay, I already do the hard disk and stuff. These are the options. So we want text. It's smart enough to abbreviate text \n. Okay, now here's the trick. Reboot. This loads the new config. Then we recompile. Now if we look at the listing of what it entered, it did text, and now text mode is on. Now we have to do a hardware reboot because the BIOS mode is has to be in real mode. When you do it doesn't